Welcome. In this video we're going to be taking a quick look at Owen, a epic grade tank class Elune. Looking first at his base stats, he has a pretty decent 50.6 KHP at 6 stars with a nice 5.2 and 5.1k PDEF and MDEF. His attack speed at 103 does make him decently quick, so he is pretty decent on the base stats. When he's transcended up to the max, his HP does go up to a very nice 75.9k with a 7.9k PDEF and 7.7k MDEF, making him pretty tanky even for an epic grade. This makes it easier to get his stats up through Gear and Dimension Slate, making him pretty hard to take on or kill. Moving on to his skills, we're going to be going over the skills and the skill gem effect sets as we do each skill. On the first skill, Shield Rush, this is a basic low damage type skill which is typical for tanks. It's a frontline only attack, this one doing physical damage. When the skill is leveled up to the max, the damage is still pretty low, but it is still decent to go ahead and level up just so he does do some damage. The skill gem effect for this one is a pretty standard chance to stun 5% for one turn, so since the skill is pretty useless and he has no other attack skills, I would probably do the skill gem effect set on this one just to give him some type of chance that he's going to do something useful with this skill, meaning that he stuns something. His special skill, this one is a 2-soul skill. This is a buff for himself called Guardstone. What this one does is at level 1 it'll summon 3 Guardstones to be flying around him, and they protect him for 2 turns. This is a soul effect, meaning that it can't be stripped or removed, so you don't have to worry about, say, a Trent removing it or anything else stripping it away. While this is on, this is a soul effect, it reduces damage by 15%. If the damage that he receives by an attack is more than 10% of his max HP, then one of the Guardstones will disappear, meaning that if he's taking high damage from single hits, then one of the Guardstones will go away. Once they're all gone, then the effect is removed. So, as the skill is leveled up though, the turn duration does go up to a 3 turn, which is pretty nice, and the damage reduction goes up to a very nice 25%. It also requires him to take up to 20% of his max HP as damage before removing one of the Guardstones. So this is a really good skill to level up. As it's only 2 souls, it is a really good buff for him, reducing the damage, making him a lot tankier. Now, the skill gem effect set for this one is Violent, Violent, Violent. So, while going with something else you might think is good, it's a soul effect, so I wouldn't, it's the bonus that you're going to get from any type of skill gems isn't going to be effective on this one, so I would go with the recommended, also because this is a 3% HP heal when he uses it, meaning that he can spam it to help heal himself or keep himself alive. Even though it's only 3%, it is still a heal, and it is still something he can use on himself. His ultimate skill, this one is another soul effect, the buff that he gives to himself. Soul effects are really nice because they can't be stripped by other enemies, like they can't be stripped by an Artemil skill 1, or they can't be stripped by a Trent or anything else that removes buffs. So they're pretty nice to have, so him having a special and ultimate skill that both give him tanky stats based on soul effects is really nice. This one gives him a soul effect that increases his attack, his PDEF and MDEF by 10% of his max HP for 2 turns. While this buff is on, any hit that he does with Shield Rush will provoke whatever target he hits for 2 turns. Since Shield Rush is only a frontline only attack, this means that he only can provoke frontline enemies for 2 turns, but it does make it so he can help focus attacks onto him if they're running a multiple Elune frontline. Those type of setups are pretty common in air battles and sometimes in the Underground Arena, the UGD Arena, where you'll have just a Reaper in the background, or maybe just a Trent in the back line, and then everything else in the front line. If that's the case, Owen is good to use against those teams because you can provoke everything in the front just by attacking with this first skill after using this. When this skill is leveled up to the max, the PDEF, MDEF, and attack gain is 20% of his max HP, and it lasts for 3 turns, which is really nice. The provoke doesn't go up any, but it's still 2 turns, but this makes the duration of the buff last for 3 turns. This only takes 4 souls, so the skill is pretty cheap to use comparatively for an ultimate skill. So this, when you combine the ultimate with his special skill for damage reduction, for the base PDEF and MDEF, plus just the damage reduction itself from the special skill, all as soul effects, this makes him pretty nice as a tank, especially when you can't bring like a Weiwei in to give him those additional buffs. So this makes him pretty good as a tank, especially like in Underground Arena where you need a good tank. He can be especially useful there just because of that. The skill gem effect for this one again is a violent thing, which is all speed. This restores 5% of his HP when it's used. I would again recommend this because it is a heal, so it just makes it a little bit better for healing, so he can self-sustain a little bit better. Looking at his passives, the first passive is if there's no other tank class Elunes in the team, then he gets a soul effect because it's a passive, so it's a soul effect that increases his PDEF and MDEF by 10%. Typically, you're not going to be running him with additional tank Elunes, so he should be getting this 10% PDEF, MDEF all the time. This makes him pretty good for PvE and PvE, so because he should always have this. So with an additional 10% increase in PDEF and MDEF, this passive too just helps him on his beefiness and tankiness to absorb damage. The second passive, when his HP falls below, or anytime it's below 50%, then he gets an automatic buff basically that reduces the damage he's received by 10%, which is really nice because this just lowers the damage that he takes by even more. Plus the healing that he gets is increased by 50%, which means those special skill gem effect heals will be even better for him to get him back up to above 50% HP. Plus any healers that you have healing him will get an easier job because the healing that they're going to be doing is 150% on him, so that makes him a lot easier to heal back up. The third passive that he has, this one, what it does is it gives him an additional 20% chance to not get hit or resist weakening effects, which is good against anything that applies weaken effects, but not everything does, so that's not too bad. The second part of this passive, it reduces the duration of debuffs. Most debuffs only last 2 turns anyway, but some of them will last 3 or 4 turns, and in some occasions 5 turns, depending on what they are. So having this, what it does is anything that lasts that a debuff, say something tries to apply, like a Chloe Van tries to apply a paralyze effect to him for 3 turns with her special skill. Well, and what this does is it reduces it down to 2 turns instead of 3, so he has a chance to get out of it a little bit sooner. AoE stun from like a Nika or a McCarthy skill 3 or a Nika skill 2 that are supposed to be 3 turns, this will reduce it down to 2 turns, so any debuffs that he takes will always be 2 turns max, not 3 or 4 or whatever. So this does make him a little bit easier to break out of those CCs or something like that. It does help him get through that a little bit easier by making sure that he's he doesn't have any duration longer than 2 turns. It's the same thing for other effects and stuff too, like bleeds or anything like that, any type of soul damage type effects. So it does help him get out of those a little bit quicker. As far as gear goes or stats goes for what you would want to be looking for on him, gear, tank set, the level 80 or 85 tank sets are going to be what you're going to want to do for him. If you can get a full set or even a 3-piece set, it's going to be good. It's going to help him be tankier. If you can't get that, going with the Disciple Elune set is going to be pretty good, because that'll give him shields plus additional defenses. Anything that can basically, you're going to want to try to get him as high HP as possible. So you're going to want to go HP in the offhand slot so you can get as much HP as possible. The higher the gray that you can get on his necklace for the HP is going to be good. Any type of tank set, it's going to be dependent on what you have, what kind of gear you can get, what you have available to you. But basically look for stats, look for set bonuses, look for gear bonuses, especially on rings and necklaces and stuff, what's going to be beneficial to them. Some of the Disciple stuff, which is 5% additional healing if he's in the front line, that's going to be good. You want to go with that to give him a little bit more heals. Even just with his own heals, he heals himself a little bit better. Those type of things, you're going to want to try to get those as much as you can, just to try to get him to be as tanky as possible. PDEF and MDEF substats, definitely get those. Try to get those as much as you can. The HP is really important with him, because his the buffs that he gives himself are based on his max HP. So the more HP that he has, the stronger the buff. So, but you're still going to want to get good PDEF, MDEF. Try to balance those out across the head and the boots. So those two gear slots, try to balance it out. One PDEF, one MDEF. Typically, doesn't matter which one's which. Just try to get one PDEF, one MDEF, just to try to get both stats up as much as you can. If you're going to be using him to fight against, say, Artemils more often, then go just double PDEF stats and whatever extra PDEF that you can get, just to reduce the damage that he takes. So things like that. Overall, Owen is a decent tank. He's not the best, but he is a pretty decent tank. For an epic grade, he is pretty good. He has good skill kit for reducing damage. One of the things that I do like about him is that his self buffs that he gets are all soul effects, which is really nice, because even from the passive, it's a soul effect, and then he has two buffs which are soul effects that reduce damage, which are all really good for him, meaning that you can bring him into something and you don't have to worry about his buffs getting stripped off, because they're soul effects, so the enemy can't ever remove those buffs, which means he'll always have those on to him. And that is something that's pretty unique about him, is that his buffs are soul effects. So it's a really good thing about him when fighting against something that does do strips. So if you're fighting a team that does do a lot of strips and you need a good tank to absorb that damage, Owen isn't too bad into those battles. Now, of course, you're still going to be having to deal with lots of damage output from the enemies, since he is a epic grade. The damage that he'll typically take is going to be high, so unless you have him on really good gear and potentially some dimension slate upgrades and stuff, he is going to take a lot of damage, so you're going to want a pretty good healer to go along with him, just to make sure that he stays alive. So other than that, his skill kit, he's not as useful for PvE, just because he doesn't really do much other than his front attack only. He can be used as a tank for certain situations on certain bosses or scenario, or adventure type bosses or something, but usually they're going to be better tank options for PvE that are typically just better to use for more damage, for killing stuff quicker. He's just more of a big old damage sponge, so you just want to make him as tanky as possible. So he does do a little bit better in PvP, but especially in UGD Arena, where his cost to use for merit cost isn't too high compared to some others, especially legendary tanks, and he'll still do a pretty good job there. So overall, not a bad tank, Elune. Stats are pretty decent, not the best, but definitely not the worst one either. So something to keep in mind if you are building him and you do want to use him, and especially for PvP, you are going to need some pretty good gear to get on him. I would definitely recommend at least a 3-piece level 80-85 tank set on him, and then perhaps like a 3-piece Disciple set, or something else that increases his PDEF, MDEF, anything like that you can get for him that increases his stats. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.